Welcome to No Shame in Our Game, a podcast where we say no thank you to shame. We're not letting that shame get us. We're talking about it. We're bringing it into the light that it cannot grow or have a big handle on us. That was a much longer intro than I intended, but I am here with my co-host, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Lacey. I really liked your intro. Thank you. I think we should riff every single time and just make a new one that comes out.
Fantastic. I love it. Everything about it. We took a little hiatus for our own physical and mental health, physical health for me, but we're getting back into the swing of things with another shame interview that Sarah did.
Yes, I talked to Michelle, and I'll just be honest. She's known as Michelle V in my head because that's just how I have her saved in all my contacts. We actually talk about her last name in the interview. I've known Michelle for years. We actually met in the same networking group where Lacey and I met years ago, and I have been inspired by her. She took a really painful situation and she turned it into an avenue to help others, which is exactly what we're doing here at Practical Hug. And I mean, that's the only way life is going to feel better and easier is if we shine a spotlight on this sucked and I'm going to help the next person. And so I've been inspired by Michelle's journey for years, and I was really honored that she was able to open up and talk about the shame that came along with that journey. And man, she is, you'll hear in the interview, she is unapologetic, and I love it. I love it. I was not taught like that growing up as a woman, and hearing her model that to me was very inspiring.
Trigger warning, this does contain a lot of talk about very difficult things, specifically child loss. So always take care of yourself and your mental health, but we're talking about it so that it doesn't have to be as much of a trigger in the future and that the shame that goes with it doesn't have to bring you down.
And yes, and I'm so glad you brought up that trigger warning. And I would also say it's good to explore the shame from both sides, which is if you're the person going through it, and also if you have someone in your life going through it, it really helps examine what can we do on both sides of the coin to minimize shame in what is really just life. There doesn't need to be shame when life happens.
All right, let's jump right in.
Hi, and welcome. We are here with Michelle, and I was trying to remember how long we've known each other, Michelle. And also, oh my gosh, okay, so many things right now. I have to do full honesty. I actually do not know how to pronounce your last name.
Totally fine.
So Michelle, why don't you say your first and last name for the audience?
Yes, totally fine. Not unheard. Michelle Valiukenas.
Actually, that was how I was going to guess. But my maiden name is it's one of those things where you either get it right the first time or you say it wrong 20 times. I was like, I don't know. I'll just ask before I assume. So Michelle,
Yes.
Thank you. I finally heard your last name. And then I was trying to remember how long we've known each other. We met in an online, we met through Hey Mama, right?
We met through Hey Mama.
Which is an online virtual working mom peer support group, which doesn't exist the way it did when we met. Has it been 5 years?
As I was thinking it was about 5 years probably, because I was thinking like 2021-ish.
Yes.
Give or take a little bit. And yeah.
That makes sense. And we met because I don't know who started it. It was a way for moms to keep working on their crafting. It was like crochet and coffee, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. And so I was knitting in the group, and you're a crocheter, right?
I have crocheted. I was doing embroidery at the time.
That's right. Okay. I do remember this now.
Yeah. And I loved it because it was a time for us to carve out, we'll be networking, but we'll also be working on our own crafts.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So are you still working on your...
I am still a knitter. It comes in waves and goes of when do I have enough time to do it and all of that. But yeah, still doing it and just loving it. So.
Good. Yeah. I actually just moved my embroidery craft bag. It's just been sitting dormant, and I had to move it, and I was like, oh, I miss you, sweetie. We'll play together again sometime.
I promise, one day.
Not today.
Yes.
So as much as I could talk about crafting with you all day, we've invited you here because this is no shame in our game, and we're going to unpack a shame journey that you've had. But before we start talking about whichever shame journey you're comfortable unpacking, I would love for you to tell the audience about your foundation and what you do, and that will help the audience understand your background.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is very personal and professional, or very conjoined. I haven't yet figured out the celebrity name of personal and professional being married to each other. But with my oldest daughter, she died at 9 days old. And that came after a journey of being hospitalized unexpectedly while pregnant, a traumatic preterm birth, and then a NICU stay that lasted 9 days before we lost her. And in that journey, one of the things that really occurred to me very quickly was the huge financial privilege that I was so lucky to have, and how I wasn't worried about finances, right? I was worried about everything else, but I wasn't worried about finances. We were going to be okay. And that was a huge privilege that I saw very few families could say the same thing, or they couldn't say the same thing for very long. And so that was something that really spoke to me, and really just was like a motivating factor of, this is something we have to do with it. And didn't intend to start something of my own, but really just got into thinking about this and it driving me, and finding there was just a huge gap in services of nobody was really addressing the financial piece. So we started an organization. We started with the sole intent of the financial assistance piece. It's still what we're known for. So it's financial assistance for families dealing with high risk and complicated pregnancies, NICU stays, and loss. And so it's one-time emergency financial assistance, can cover anything from transportation to and from a doctor's office or the hospital, rent, utilities, phone bills, any kind of monthly expenses you would think of. We've probably encountered it at this point. Yeah, so that's my background, a little story. I also have a almost 6-year-old, so crazy to say, at home, and who is a ball of energy and just a complete joy. And yeah.
This is really early on in the episode for me to say I'm welling up with tears already. I know your story. We've known each other, like we said, for probably 5 years. I know your story. I've been to your website 100 times. And it still hits me that you took something so challenging and difficult, and you said, oh my gosh, I was able to navigate this easier than others, and then I'm going to make my life mission to help others. I always want to stop and appreciate people who do amazing things. And so first of all, just thank you for taking that experience to help others. And I'm sorry for your loss. I don't think I've ever said that to you before. And also, I want to tell our audience, if you feel moved to pledge and make a donation, you can go. We will link the website in our show notes. If you want to say the name of the foundation again.
Sure. So it's the Colette Louise Tisdahl Foundation. So named after my daughter, Colette. And yes, we always appreciate contributions. We've worked it out so 100% of donations goes directly to financial assistance program. So it's going directly to families who need it. And that's really something that I worked at doing, and that we did. And I think, and we can get more into it with some of the shame stories, but I think a lot of people will always say, I can't believe you did this. How did you do this? I wouldn't be strong enough. And I think we all have strength in us that we don't know, right? And how do you do it? You do it because that's the only choice you have, right? And that was really, I think I always want to go back to saying this. It wasn't a decision of, oh, I have the strength to do it. It was just what life dealt me, right? And we all have stuff in our lives that other people would look at and say, I could never do that. And the truth is, nobody who does it expected to do it. They just do it because that's what they're handed. And so that's something that I'm very saying is, there isn't anything special that I did to survive it. It was just, I survived it. And I survived it in the way that worked for me. That's kind of what I still really, spend a lot of time on, is this is what I did. We all have capabilities at various degrees to survive these things. So,
well, and that's why I'm so passionate about sharing stories and hearing stories, is because to see that in other people, oh, I can take this thing and transform it. Other people have gotten through this. Because when you're in it, right, it's good to see other people who've gotten to the other side. And so it's so powerful. And so, yes, going back to the purpose of our podcast, the no shame, I know, I don't want to say it's only women, because, right, men carry shame too. But I know, especially as women, we carry a whole buffet of shame throughout our lives, different sizes and weights and different topics. But is there a shame story or event that you feel comfortable sharing with the audience that you would want to unpack?
Sure.
In hopes, and this is always in hopes, this is not like just to share shame and peek at it. It's like in hopes that somebody else will go, oh my gosh, I feel this too. I'm not
Right.
alone.
Right.
And it's like by opening the door, my hope is that we can all feel a little bit lighter and get through things easier.
Yeah. I think it's just my whole journey to parenting, to parenthood has been a shame. I couldn't get pregnant, right? This notion that we're given of you have sex, you get pregnant, you have baby. That's just a societal kind of thing. And I couldn't get pregnant. And just trying, and we've only ever gotten pregnant via IVF, right? And the shame that I think it comes from being a woman and not being able to do what you are essentially programmed to do, right? Biologically, but also just society wise, like you're programmed to do this. And the shame that came from that was heavy. I remember saying to my husband on multiple occasions, I'm okay. It's okay if you need to leave me to have a child with somebody else. It's okay. I will be okay with it. I don't know how I'm going to deal with it, but I would sort of give you that permission to leave because I was really shamed that I couldn't do it. It just felt like a complete failure as a woman. Now, luckily, I'm married to probably one of the greatest men in the world who was like, I don't want to have kids with other people. I want to have kids with you. So whatever that means, we're here. But it was still that like belief of like the shame of I couldn't do it. And then the shame that I couldn't stay pregnant and I couldn't have a healthy pregnancy, right? The shame of being hospitalized at 21 weeks pregnant with no warning signs. What do you mean that you have this, right? One of the stories I always like to tell is my grandmother, God bless her, we lost her a few years ago. But when I was hospitalized with preeclampsia, she called me and she said, what happened? Did you have a fight with Mark, meaning my husband? I just remember thinking, even if I had, right, we're all allowed to have fights in our marriages and our relationships. That was not going to trigger me to be hospitalized, right? And so it was like, no. And she still kept bringing that up as a thing. And it was like, yeah, that went away. Even if that had triggered the first incident of the high blood pressure, eventually that dissipates and goes away. And it doesn't require hospitalization. But again, it was like that shame of like, how dare you not have taken care of yourself or done something or done the wrong thing. And so it was that shame and that kind of just guilt and feeling like I hadn't done my part, right? And after we lost her, it took me a very long time. So she's been gone a little over 8 years now. And it took me a very long time to not immediately go into a spiral of all the things I could have done or I should have done or that I did do and I shouldn't have done, all of that. It took me a very long time to not go to that. And I still have moments where I go to that, right? Because that's really hard and that's really difficult. And then being in the place where I had been pregnant twice, I had lost a pregnancy early on. I had lost a baby. And then to be on this position where then the next thing was, what do we do next? We still want to bring a child home. What do we do? What does that look like? And this summer, Colette died May 31st. That summer, I really spent, and I ran around to every doctor and did every test I could imagine in the world, right? Including, I had a gastroenterologist who said, I would recommend you doing a colonoscopy. I was like, great, let's do a colonoscopy. Let's find what's wrong with me because something's wrong with me. We'll fix that and then everything will be fine, right? And I can fulfill this duty that I have. And what it turned out to be was that there was nothing that they could find. And we went and we did all of this, the searching and everything like this. And we tried again and I didn't get pregnant. And then I had the shame of the day we found out that an IVF cycle didn't take, being with my husband and him sobbing because it felt like such a loss. And yes, while I was sad, I also was really relieved. And it was because I didn't want to be pregnant again. And that's a shame. That is just, how could I not want to have to do this? And I did still want to have my own biological child. The idea of me being pregnant was so scary. And I sat in that shame for weeks. I didn't say a word to anybody, just like sat in this. Yes, I want to have a child, but I don't really want to be pregnant. And what does that mean? How do we do this? And then came to this conclusion that what we ended up doing was we ended up using a gestational carrier to bring home our son, largely because nobody could tell me, hey, we're going to do something different. And the chances of this happening are either gone or so low. Nobody could tell me that. nobody had a great solution. Nobody had anything. But the shame then in saying, I don't want to be pregnant. And then when you get to that decision, going forward with it. And then I still remember finding out our surrogate was pregnant and being really thrilled and all of that. And then 2 days later, feeling this overwhelming shame and loss over not carrying our child. And I remember crying to my husband and saying, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done this. This was a bad idea, whatever. And him looking at me like, but she's pregnant. What are you talking about? And really just having to work through the idea of there was nothing shameful in not carrying our child, right? And that actually, in a lot of ways, it was me being an even better mother than to realize my limitations and where I was at and what I could do, and to give up this thing I had always wanted to say, this is the best chance to bring home a healthy baby and all of that. But it was all this shame that came with it, right? And that follows through, right? I talk about my child who died. I get a lot of weird looks and a lot of people who are like very uncomfortable when I say, right? Never thought I could clear a room faster or get people to run away faster from me than when I mention it, right? And with that, other people's reactions sort of triggers that shame feeling of, oh, should I not be talking about this? Which is so ridiculous because it's happening, right? It's happening to our loved ones, it's happening to friends and family, it's happening to everyone. We're just not talking about it. And so I think there's just been this, what society wants from you, right? I get the overwhelmed message. A lot of people want me to shut up. They would like me to never mention Colette again. They chose the wrong person. The universe chose the wrong person to have this experience because I wasn't going to shut up about it. I'm still not going to. But there's that kind of a feeling of that where there's this shame and this secretiveness. And it's so interesting because for as outspoken and as open as I am, how many times I will get people who it's the whisper, right? It's the like, I also had a loss. And you're like, okay, and you don't have to whisper. This isn't a crime. This isn't a terrible tragedy. It is a terrible tragedy, but you saying it is not the tragedy. And so it's so interesting to sort of be in this frame where it's like, and I still struggle with days that I feel really shameful that I didn't. And it's really hard. And I think it's so much just put on, we don't talk about it. We don't do this. We don't do that when it's happening and people are still dealing with it happening.
First, I always want to acknowledge, thank you for sharing that. Again, somebody's going to hear this and that's going to be some validation that they need in what they're going through. And there's so much to unpack there. And I'm laughing because I'm just like, oh my gosh, which thread to pull first? I mean, going backwards, you're talking about like the people whispering, and it's like, well, it's, there's nothing wrong with telling me you had a loss, but it's like realizing culturally, think about our grandparents' age. That was still the age where they didn't hide the pregnancy, but they didn't flaunt it either. And like all of a sudden it was like the baby's just home. Like it was the stork. It was all supposed to be like smoke and mirrors. Don't look at the man behind the curtain type deal, And then so
I'll be like Lucille Ball showing up, pregnant on camera was groundbreaking, right? And just what?
Exactly though. But I'm realizing it's funny how far we've come in so many ways since Lucille Ball. We'll use that as the timeline. And yet women are whispering to you that they had a loss. And it's like, oh, wow, there's so many areas where we still have a lot of room to grow. So I think it's wonderful that you're not quiet about it, because there is no reason to be quiet about it. I mean, I'm not saying losing a baby is like breaking a leg. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when people break a leg, there's no shame around saying, oh, my leg was in a cast, I had to use crutches, right? So why do as a society feel this inherent shame around? It's just, it's interesting, and I don't think it's going to change unless me and you and others decide it's not shameful. It is safe to talk about. And I'm curious, going through that whole story, do you still feel the shame, or is it in a different level of shame? Like, how does that?
Yeah. Do I still feel some shame over Colette didn't make it and had issues in my body, right? Yes. Will I ever get rid of that? No, I don't think so. Have I learned to work through a lot of it so it's not constant? Yes. Do I still have days that they're like spirals of, I remember for a long time really saying, I killed my baby. of saying that and really feeling that. I don't feel that same way anymore, but there are moments when I do feel that way, right? Because again, I think it's the whole thing is like, this hold women out to this aspect of, and not even taking political climate out of it, but just like this idea of like, you were raised with this idea of like, you're a woman, ergo, like you have to protect this virtue of yours, right? So you can't have sex until it's accepted by society. You can't have this. So it's this kind of thing. And then that once you do, you get pregnant. And it's just, of course you do. Like there's no issues and pregnancy is this glorious, magical, wonderful time. And we don't talk about postpartum. Now we finally do, but all of that. And the truth of the matter is a lot of people struggle to get pregnant. A lot of people, pregnancy is not a magical time, right? A lot of people have horrific postpartums. And for so long, we've hidden behind this like view of the like happily ever after kind of fairy tale nonsense of this is what you do. And so you are biologically designed to be able to do this. So if you are not doing it, clearly there's something wrong with you, right? We have just recently really started paying attention to the male infertility and the male fertility factors, which in a lot of cases, unfortunately for my husband and I and a lot of people, it was just unknown reasons. Like we don't really know why. You just apparently can't seem to conceive. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. But it's still very much still on a woman is the one carrying the baby, right? So if things happen during a pregnancy, it's in her body. It must be her fault. And that's just derived in doing this. So I do still feel some shame. And I don't think I will ever fully get rid of that. I think it's better. And the bad days are fewer and further between and they're not as intense. But they're still there. And I think that's just part of the problem because we don't talk enough about it. And we don't say, this is happening to us over and over again. We just don't say it.
So 2 things. One is when you were saying that, it was making me remember. So when my son was born, after 24 hours of active labor, they said, we recommend giving you an epidural. And I remember, 24 hours I hadn't slept, active labor. I was not in my best mind. But I remember crying and saying during the epidural, I said, I failed. And all the nurses are like, what are you talking about, honey? And I was like, I failed. I was supposed to be able to do this. So when you were talking about that, like I was supposed to be able to do this. Yeah, that was what I felt. I felt like I'm a woman. I'm supposed to be able to have a baby without assistance. And then I wanted to go to, you were talking about making people uncomfortable. And I'm so intrigued around our society. And I don't know about other cultures, but I don't think it's not, I know it's different in other parts of the world, but in our society, yeah, it's like nothing uncomfortable can be discussed. Like anything that's not like pretty and worthy of a magazine cover and like, like picture perfect, it's like, oh, don't talk about it. Right. Put it in the closet, shut the doors. And it's like, how is that helping anyone? Right. And that's what I feel like that's what that shame is that it happened, but we're not going to talk about it. So then it just, it grows. And I've mentioned on here before about how after my mom passed, it was like, I didn't want to talk about it because I could tell it made other people uncomfortable. And so it was like, oh, so now I have to emotionally like guard against making other people upset. And it was,
right.
And yeah, not that I had to, but I could see on people's faces.
And then you take it as biologically the way that we are, we know we're going to bury our parents, right? That's the circle of life, right? Now if we reverse it and we do something that is against nature, right? And so we bury a child, people get even more uncomfortable because it's, that's not supposed to happen, right? So it's this knowledge of, I was sharing the story recently with my son, Elliot. So we were using a surrogate because we had been already very open about our journey. I shared our pregnancy very early. So I think I'm talking like 6-7 weeks of pregnancy I shared. And I got a lot of people who said, you can't share that early, or that's not what we do, or things like that. My response was, this is what I need. Like I needed people to know from as early as I felt comfortable with, because I needed cheerleaders behind us, right? This was going to be a difficult thing on so many levels. And so I needed to know that there was a ton of people behind sharing it. And they were. And so when people said that to me, one of the things they said is, yeah, but if something happens, then you have to tell people. And I was like, okay. But on the other side, if something happens, then people know and they can be prepared to support, right? It's not us telling people for the first time that we were pregnant and now we've lost. It's people who already knew, who already had some investment. And yes, is it an uncomfortable conversation to have? Of course. But so what? Wouldn't it have been so much better to just have some, luckily we didn't have that situation, but it would have been so much nicer to be able to speak to a group of people and say, we lost. And let me explain to you what that feels like. And you know this, and now you can be a support to me. But it was this like idea of like, that's not what we do, or we shouldn't do that. And it was like, and everyone is different, right? I've known people, I mean, my sister included with her oldest, my sister had a friend who had lost, and she was just very uncomfortable. And so she didn't really share. In fact, to the point where I was sending out invitations for her baby shower, and people were RSVPing to me and saying, I didn't even know she was pregnant. It was like, and she chose it, and that was her, like what she wanted to do. And that was also a support. Like wherever you fall on the spectrum, these like antiquated rules of we can't tell until we're into the second trimester, blah, blah, blah. They're there and they can be followed if they wanted to, but they're not hard and fast rules. You can announce whatever you want. You can say whatever you need to say, and that's okay. And I think that's something that's very interesting, is this like to avoid not only is it to make people uncomfortable, it's like to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Like now we don't even share parts of ourselves with other people because, well, then we would have to go back and tell them. And
yeah, the implication there is don't tell me something that might make me uncomfortable in the future. I'm protecting myself. Stay in the know with all things Practical Hug. Come over to practicalhug.substack.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. It is a small drop of joy in your inbox. It's usually a 2-minute read. There's a funny picture. We let you know what's going on, and we share something uplifting to brighten your day. And again, it comes back to that we're so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. It's okay that something sad happens. And the way we get through it in a healthy way is to come together. Like you said, you wanted people to know because if it didn't work out, you wanted to have support. Yeah, it's so interesting. We like push and we put ourselves in these little tiny bowls, right? And then we only show on the outside the happy, the pretty, the put together. But then inside our bowls, we all feel lonely and scared and helpless. But then everyone's feeling that way in their own bowls. Right. Whereas I'm standing here with no shame going like, hey, everybody, let's spill our bowls and let's just be honest about what's going on.
Exactly. And let's also recognize that here's the thing. In doing this and sharing all of this, am I opening myself up to people having really terrible reactions? Yes. Have I had situations where people have had really terrible reactions? Yes. Will I continue to do so? Absolutely. But I also have really amazing connections, and whether it be with somebody else who had a similar experience and can have that connection, that relationship right away, or somebody who just can sympathize and empathize with being in that space and getting it and saying it. And I also think it's an opportunity to learn. One of the things that I think, and I think I've shared this story with you, Sarah, and maybe I haven't, but one of the things that I really loved was I had a former boss, and we hadn't really seen each other for probably about a year after Colette died. And she had definitely sent me messages and text messages and all that and did this. But I saw her in person, and she said to me, my generation, we didn't talk about this. And she said, and so friends of mine have said I shouldn't bring it up to you. But I don't think that's accurate. However, I want to learn from you. So is it okay if I ask about Colette? And I said to her, and so this was I didn't have a living child. And I said to her, you have sons. Do you like talking about your sons? And she said, of course, I'm a mom. What mom doesn't love talking about their kids? And I said, okay, so I'm a mom. I love talking about my kids. And yes, one of my kids is not here. And that sucks. And it's a different kind of conversation I'm talking about them. But I still want to talk about my kid. And one of the things that I really appreciated was that she was coming from, this is what I was taught. We don't talk about this because we don't want to remind people. We don't want to bring things up. We don't want to make them sad. Okay, I've yet to meet somebody who has lost a baby who does not remember their baby every single day of their lives, right? So you're not reminding them of anything. They know, okay, you can ask things, right? There are days where you might approach me where it's like, I don't really want to have that conversation right now. And I'll tell you. But if you just meet people where they're at, instead of making assumptions and be open to, hey, I can learn something from this conversation. And maybe it can make it better for the next person that I encounter that goes through this. It starts to remove all of that stigma and everything so we can actually have conversations about it. And it's so interesting because, yes, I do think these are really isolating things that happen. And it's so interesting that when you open yourself up and you say these things, how many people just come flying out of it to say, I had that same experience. Or I didn't, now I don't feel so alone. And I feel that all the time too, right? I will talk to people and people will tell me, and every time somebody tells me, not only do I admire that they have the bravery to tell me and that they feel that I'm a comfortable person to tell, but also it makes me feel even less alone. And so it's so interesting how we silo ourselves into these shame little pods. And then we say, oh, wait, but other people are experiencing this. And if we let other people in, then it doesn't feel so siloed, right? Then it feels a little bit more connected. And if we keep doing it, it feels even more connected to a point where we can all handle this better.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing with this podcast is that, yeah, I'm hoping that by having more of these conversations and for people just to hear it, just to even plant that seed of an idea, to hear the language. I like how you shared the story of that woman that you worked with and she said, is it okay? Like, I think part of the whole thing is as a society, we don't have the language and we're afraid of saying the wrong things and making it worse. Right. And so again, part of this whole conversation, it's just like, let's figure out, what do we say to somebody? Knowing that we are not coming from a place where we know how to say happy birthday. We know how to say like, congrats on the new job. Like we know how to say all of that. We don't know how to say, is it okay for us to talk about Colette?
Or to say, I have no words.
Yes.
Right? Some of the stuff that the things were people who just said, I don't know what to say. Or just said, I'm sorry. What a mind-blowing thing. 2 words, I'm sorry. How that covers so many things. Or if I'm sorry feels uncomfortable, I love you. I'm here. What do you need? All of those kinds of things. And to be really genuine with when you're saying it, don't just say it to say it. Say it and back it up. So if it's like, I'm here for you, then back it up and be willing to sit in the quiet and to sit in the uncomfortable. One of the things I always say when people ask me, I'm like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, yes. Right? I don't ever want to get to a point where we're comfortable with babies dying, right? That shouldn't be comfortable. That should be something that triggers us to say, this is wrong, this is something, okay. But you can get comfortable with the fact of, I'm going to be uncomfortable in this moment, in this time, and I'm going to have to just realize this is going to end. Because at the end of the day, when people will say, oh, I'm really uncomfortable with this, or they won't say that, but the implication is there. I'm not comfortable with the fact that I lost a child. But like your comfort level for the time you have to speak to me and spend with me, you get to go away. I don't get to go away from that feeling. That's part of me. Mm-hmm. So yes, is it uncomfortable for, you? Yes. But guess what? It's uncomfortable for me too. It's just learning how to deal with it. It's like getting comfortable with, it is uncomfortable to talk about babies dying. It is uncomfortable. We know that. I don't ever want it to not be uncomfortable. But we can be okay and we can say things. And we can say, I don't know what to say. Like, how powerful is that? Is to just say, I wish there were words. I wish I could wave a magic wand. I wish I could do stuff. Because I always feel like it falls into a couple of different categories of the way people react. People want to run away from you as fast as they can, which I have literally seen. Literally and figuratively run away. People want to fix it. So that's when we get these platitudes like, at least you can have another child or whatever, which are not helpful and are actually more triggering. And then people who make it about them, right? This is making me so uncomfortable. And so like what you said with after your mom died, like where they're so uncomfortable with it, is like, you're almost fixing them. And it's like, no, I shouldn't have to do that. But what if we just took away all of that? And we just said, hey, I don't know what to say. I really wish I could say something. How vulnerable is that to just say, I could tell you a platitude. It's not going to help. I could try to fix it, but there's no fixing it. And instead, I could just say to you, a human being to human being, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I love you. Like any of those kinds of things. This sucks. Or I will clean up my language. Or this effing sucks. Like whatever it might be. To just do that. To just sit there in the discomfort. How powerful, how vulnerable that would be. And what a difference that would make to people if we all did that.
I really deeply, truly, sincerely hope. I mean, Lacey and I always say, if this podcast helps one person, if one person hears this podcast and they get the language to use to help somebody else going through something that's really difficult, that will be one more person who feels an ounce of support going through something hard. And as you were talking, I remembered I'd totally forgotten about this. Before I became a mom, I mean, this was a long time ago, I had a neighbor who had a 2-year-old daughter who was diagnosed with a terminal condition, and she was going to die. They just basically had to wait a year to watch her go through this disease. And I remember I just walked straight to her house when I found out, and I just said, and she had her baby there with her. She was unloading groceries, and I just said, I don't know what to say, but I know that saying nothing is not the right answer. And I just remember standing there looking at her, and I was like, I'm just here because I'm not going to pretend like this isn't happening to you. Right. And I just helped her carry in her groceries. And I was just like, and obviously there was more beyond that, but yeah, it is that going outside of your own comfort zone, knowing that you might, again, like if it's 1 ounce, if it's 1 drop, if you can just make that person feel comforted, it's not going to take it away.
No.
But you won't feel that isolation and that shame by no one talking about it. I feel like I'm so inspired to do a whole course. I'll make it free. It's like what to say when. But it's like, let's practice. Let's practice saying this. Like,
right, exactly. Yes. No, and I've been doing a lot more. And so I will also say, I've been doing a series on Instagram Reels really recently, and I'm going to continue with about things lost parents hate hearing and then why they hate hearing it. And here are things to say instead. And it's really simple things, right? One of the things that was always so funny to me that I would hear over and over again was, at least you can have another. And the way that I finally broke it down for somebody, because somebody was like, I don't understand why that's a bad thing. I said, okay, my grandmother died, right? And when people came, they said, I'm sorry, all of the things, right? But nobody said, at least you can have another grandmother. Nobody said that to me. Because when you hear that, you think, your mom died. Nobody said, at least you can have another mother or anything like that. Nobody says that because it's unheard of. So why is it on this one little thing that like we wouldn't do in any other situation? We feel the need to say that. And it's when I said that, I remember saying that to somebody and somebody going, I never thought about it like that. I'm like, yeah, even, and yes, I know it's good, but even in a situation where a spouse dies, right? I had a good friend who lost her partner a few years ago. She has dated since. She may end up getting remarried or in another relationship. But I'm not saying that to her at a funeral. At least you can have another relationship. No. Do I hope that if that's what she wants to do, she does? Absolutely. If she decides she never wants to have another partner, another relationship, I got her back. Whatever it is that she wants to do. But I would never say to her, at least you can have another relationship. Because I know that her loss was a loss. And regardless of whatever happens next, she will always mourn and grieve her partner. That's it. It's so interesting when you start breaking it down for people. If people don't say that, right? They just don't. But yet, when we get to this one thing, because we're so uncomfortable with it, we have to rationalize it away. Yes, I know your baby died, but you can have another baby. That's fine, right? And then it'll be fine. Is it? No, it's not. And so that kind of things where it's when we start really looking at it is, yes, we don't navigate grief and loss very well. But when we start really taking it into the bigger context, it's so powerful because it's, oh yeah, that's true. I wouldn't say that to somebody. So why am I saying that to my friend who lost? And that's the stuff that I think is so powerful. So that was one thing that I've really started trying to do is to do more of those. Don't say this. Why don't you say this? Try saying this instead, kinds of things. Because I think it's really powerful to hear that.
No, and I appreciate you doing that. And I think that's the only way forward is where there's a gap, there's nothing. But if you can fill that in with here are some ideas, right? Instead of just shaming people for like, don't tell me, oh, I can have another. It's like, well, then you're telling people, here's what you can say,
Right.
which I really appreciate, because that's how we make change in the world, is by showing people. I'm curious, going back to the shame that you felt with that journey, which that is a very long journey with everything that you shared. What would you say either to, if you could talk to Michelle then, or let's say there's somebody who's in the middle of the IVF, or maybe they're in the hospital with the NICU, like all those shame that came through the journey, like what could you say to somebody either going through it or previous Michelle? Do you feel like there's anything that could be said to help with that, with the shame specifically?
Yeah, I think some reminders of it's not your fault. And I think being willing to talk about it and not being uncomfortable with it. I think that's really the important part, right? So often, especially with fertility, people want to fix it, right? So I can't tell you how many times I heard about my cousins, hairdressers, sisters, best friends, uncle, whatever. They did this and then they got pregnant. That's great. But are they having the same experience that I'm having and the same reasons and the same background on it? Maybe not. Oh, just go on vacation. Okay, great. At one point, I sat down. My husband and I traveled a lot when we were trying to get pregnant. We didn't have kids. We had disposable income. We were at a point. And I one time went down and I literally counted how many vacation days we had. And I said, when people would say that to me, I'd say, really, we had X amount of vacation days and we still didn't get pregnant. So, and it would bother people to say it because it's like people want to we want to fix things, right? We want to wrap things up in a nice little ball and fix them. Don't fix. Just be there and say, this sucks. This is a bad thing. This shouldn't be happening to you. It's unfair. It's all of that. Be willing to just sit there and say that. And then be willing to sit there and talk, to let them talk about whatever they need to talk about, right? And is it in a fertility? Is it like, why is it that every time I turn around, somebody else is pregnant and I have to just deal with that? Is it that? Is it, I lost a baby and I stay up at night and I can't sleep because I just go through every single move of my pregnancy. And I think of all the things I should have done differently or that I should have done more of or less of or all that. That's so powerful because it's the shame of, are we ever going to get to a point where there's not that shame of a woman who can't get pregnant right away? Are we ever going to get to that point that we get rid of that shame? I don't know. But could we get rid of the shame of then sharing those thoughts, right? Sharing the thought of, I said this one time to a friend, I said, I told Mark that he could leave me and it would be okay. And my friend was like, you can't say things like that. And I was like, but that's how I felt. And I did say that. Yes. And I'm telling you, because that is really powerful to me. Like the fact that I had that thought and then I articulated that thought to my partner, that's really hard. And when you shame that to say, you can't say that, you've now added another level of shame to the thought that you had. So not only is it the aspect of, oh, I can't conceive and therefore I have shame because of the societal view. Now I have to have shame because I had this thought about maybe I'm holding my partner back and maybe my partner should go have a child with somebody else. And so now there's that shame. And so it's like all the layers that we kind of add onto it. I think if we can just start removing some of those layers, let people talk, let people say things, let people say, how should I grieve? Grieve, however, I'm going to swear. So if you have to cut this, it's okay. Grieve however the fuck you need to grieve, right? And unless you are doing harm to yourself or to other people around you. And when I say harm, if you are driving drunk, if you are not having kids around that you are not capable of taking care of, things like that. Unless you are doing one of those two things, grieve however you need to grieve. Because that's where it is. People want you to grieve. Grief is not linear. It is a great big mess of a roller coaster, right? And there are times when it is fine and you are fine for a long time and then you are not. And there are times when you are low for a long time and then you are okay. The best thing to know is to know it's going to go everywhere, right? It's going to do stuff. Things are going to hit you. And the happy moments are going to hit you in a different way because it's going to remind you of a loss. And that's okay. And again, as long as you are not doing harm to yourself or to other people, do it. Do whatever you need to do. And that will be, I think, how we get past some of the shame that we add on to existing shame.
Yeah, I feel like the big takeaway from all of this is the getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's how we can support one another and showing up and being there.
Yeah.
And thank you I just can't thank you enough for sharing this to help others, by creating the organization to help others, the work that you're doing. Just thank you so much. And as a reminder, people can go to ColetteLouise.com. We will have the link in our show notes. You can donate, you can pay it forward, or let people know about the foundation, that there are resources and help if somebody is going through this. And Michelle, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Sarah, for having me. I really appreciate that.
Have a great day. Bye. Thank you for listening to that interview with Michelle. As always, our hope is that by just shining the light on it, we will be making shame smaller and making joy bigger. That's always our goal. And so this interview touches one person. If it changes one person's mindset, one thought, it's reached its goal. And so thank you again to Michelle for being her, for sharing her story, and then also being a powerhouse with the work that she does. I am so inspired by what she has achieved with her organization. It really is beautiful and inspiring.
Thank you for doing the interview, Sarah. We can have a quick moment of gratitude here at the end of the episode. I would like to go first. And this is going to sound super vague, and I don't mean it to sound vague, but I have so much gratitude for the universe right now. Okay. It's been a really rough couple months. If you have followed me at all, like just bad, frustrating things over and over. And I've just been clawing and hoping for some kind of sign, like that things will get better. And my friend, the signs have started flowing in. I've been seeing them. I've been feeling them. I've been grasping for any wins, and wins are coming. So I'm grateful to the universe for finally giving me those wins and those signs that this is right. I'm doing the right things.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you, universe, for the waterfall of signs that Lacey is now receiving.
I'm exhausted because of them, but cheers.
On that note, everyone knows my dad is like a huge supporter, even though he is not our target audience. And he actually reached out to me personally and was like, I'm concerned about Lacey. I was like, yeah, it's been a tough go. That makes me so happy. And and we talked a little bit about it, and it was just really sweet. That's my dad, though. So you're in my dad's thoughts.
Appreciated.
My moment of gratitude is, okay, how do I say this? I'm going out of town, and timing wise, I'm not afraid to say that on the podcast because we'll be back home by the time this airs. But I am so thankful the work I have done it's actually about shame, on like removing shame. Previously, when I would go on a trip, I would be so uptight about having the house picked up and clean. I don't know, like I thought there was going to be a surprise inspection while I was gone. There's not. It doesn't happen. But like for some reason, I couldn't relax on vacation unless I knew the house was spotless. Saying it out loud, it really doesn't make sense. But I've talked to other women, so I know it's not just me. But I've got to say, 47 years old, been doing this work for a while. I've finally taken my own advice, and I am able to look at stuff and just go, whatever. We just got to get some clothes in a bag. Whatever. There's piles of stuff. Whatever. It'll be fine. Not going to change my vacation experience. And that is my gratitude.
We'll say it's not just women. Joe loves to have a clean house when we leave too. And it was driving my children insane. We were going on our trips because it would be like, well, we have to pack and we have to clean. And the kids are like, why do we have to clean? We're not even going to be here.
What is that? I know. Actually, I have a girlfriend who said their family went on like a 10-day trip, and they're in the driveway. Everyone's in the car. They're ready to go. And her husband got upset because he realized they hadn't vacuumed upstairs. Couldn't go on the trip because he hadn't And I'm like, what? What is this thing we all hold about cleaning our houses before we leave?
I will say, I know for Joe, and this is very valid, coming home to a clean house after traveling, I am not a good traveler. We talked about that. I wish I could be a good traveler, but I have too much anxiety about the in-between. Shocker. It's my whole brand. But the getting from one place to another is one of the most stressful things to me. So the moment of getting home or getting to Honestly, my favorite moment is when you get to your destination. There's just a level of comfort, and then I love that. But there's this element of coming home that's just, I'm done. I'm okay. And coming into a space that is messy makes that a very challenging thing. So I get that part. But I think our standards of clean are very different. No one in this house is worried about not vacuuming the upstairs.
And I do, okay, if I were to balance this as a math equation, I do totally get what you're saying, and I agree. And there is a moment at which you get to evaluate the amount of stress it's giving you on the front end versus the reward on the back end, and making sure that it's not unbalanced. Yeah, that's for me the amount of stress I would put into it. We have a dog sitter who comes and stays at our house. She doesn't like, as long as her room is clean and the bathroom is clean. So anyways, that's my gratitude. I don't care what my house looks like when I go on vacation.
It's just fine. That is our no shame in our game. As always, we have a thing that we play at the end. I don't really have to say a whole lot, do I? Sarah and I are getting back into it. Whew, I'm out of practice.
We're here. You're there. If you want to be part of this, there's a form. Go do that. Have a good day. No more shame.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Lacey.
Thanks for listening to No Shame in Our Game. We are so excited that you joined us and hopefully got rid of a little bit of shame in your life. You can learn more about No Shame in Our Game and Practical Hug at practicalhug.com. Please rate, review, and share this podcast with anyone you think would love it. We love bringing in more people in our shame-free circle. You can also submit a question at practicalhug.com/submit. We cannot wait to see you at our next No Shame in Our Game episode.